I love Los Angeles because this is like the town that you come to, and there's just a few towns in the world that you come to be the creators of the entire world. You tell all of the stories here. There's like purpose in this town. It's really hard to live here, by the way, right? And there's a reason for that. People come from all over the world to tell stories. Here, it's just in the air. That purpose is just part of what we do. I come from places in Colorado. Purpose is not just in the air. You just kind of get a job and you work 30 years and you retire. I'm not saying that's every place, but I'm just saying there's something different here that I feel magical in the room. I'm always curious about human beings' purposes, though. The thing that gives us life, the thing that we choose, the thing that we would say is like deep in our DNA, in our cells. We were just born for this thing. What's tough about this town is always like this like moment of like, can I like do the thing and can I like eat food and have gas, right? Those things don't always go together. And so you live between the tension of creativity and purpose and belonging and just economics and money and rent, and you hold all of that. But I think purpose is fascinating. I think Jesus, in a lot of ways, if we were to rethink good news, is that good news is really about our purpose. Jesus says these words, "I have come that you may have life and life to the fullest." I think that's Jesus saying, I want you to live your very best life. I want that thing that makes you alive to be known in the entire universe. So I used to go to coffee on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena on Wednesdays with a buddy at 7 a.m. I would get coffee and I would get oatmeal. And I would sit there with my coffee and oatmeal. This guy would always pull up. No one's on the street. And he would get out of his car and he had a chauffeur with him. Anyone know what a chauffeur is? Anyone like go to that kind of church? No? It's like a ram's horn, a real ram's horn that's like curved. No one knows? No one? Guys, I've been to some crazy churches. This is the good stuff, right? And this guy gets out and like, burn, right? Every Wednesday morning. Just gets back in his car, goes home. It's incredible. And when I think about people like this, when I meet like fundamentalist Christians, even the kind that scare me, even the kinds that are on corners telling everyone that God hates them and that the world is going to hell, they believe it. They really believe what they're talking about. That guy told himself somewhere because of one passage in Leviticus that the thing that God wants for his life, I'm not even half making fun of it, a little bit, but not all, that this is his purpose in the world, that on Wednesday mornings when Cory is having oatmeal and coffee, burn, to praise the Lord. And I think there's something fascinating about that. I would say that what Jesus calls us to is maturity. I would say that even more of that, what Jesus demands from us is maturity. No one likes the word demand, but we'll get there. And yet I believe that sometimes our fundamentalist brothers and sisters in this world, there's a demand that they believe. And I wonder that in our life with Jesus, would we believe that our purpose is just as important? Would we get out of bed on a Wednesday morning and give it all that we have and blow our metaphorical chauffeur, so to speak? Because we believe this is what I'm in the universe to do. And I think that when Jesus is calling his disciples and inviting them to come follow me, that's what Jesus is inviting them to do. Jesus is inviting them into this good news, into this good life where they become fully alive, where they become fully themselves, where they realize that they're fully loved, that they're fully accepted, that they're fully good, and that when they're fully alive and fully loved and fully accepted, then they get to offer the best of what they have into the world, and that's good news. And so to talk about this idea of demanding maturity, we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about chauffeur, which we already did. It was a good time. If we can do that, then we're going to talk about integrity. If we can talk about integrity, then we can talk about the post-Olympic blues. And if we can talk about the post-Olympic blues, then we'll talk about Catholic, my friends. And if we can talk about Catholic, then we'll talk about revolutionary rest. And if we can talk about that, then some of my favorite prosperity gospel words, provision. And if we can talk about provision, then we'll talk about Eswatini. Classic pastor going to Africa, coming back to talk about Africa. Great. Follow along with me in Mark chapter 6. It goes like this. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him, which version do we got? Was that the version? Oh, same version, love that. All that they had done and taught. If you're following along so far in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is doing a few things. One of the first things that Jesus always does is he just invites the disciples to come be with him. That's the mark of any good rabbi. Come be with me, watch what I do, be like me, do as I do in the world, and that's how things are going to change. I grew up in the world, though, of Christianity where we took that very literally, and I think that we lost the power of taking it seriously. Because we were trying to do what they were doing 2,000 years ago, that I think we lost the deeper universal meanings of what Jesus is trying to bring us into as human beings. So in the story so far, Jesus is calling people to follow him, and then Jesus goes out, like any good rabbi would have done, and sets the example for his disciples of what life should be like. So the Gospels tell us things, that Jesus would go, and everywhere Jesus would go, you've been in Abbey a long time, you've heard this before, everywhere Jesus would go, he would heal people. We say it in here like this: everywhere Jesus went, he would leave people better off than he found them. That's good news. That's just beautiful. That's powerful, right? And that's just a simple litmus test for any follower of any rabbi, right? It's a simple litmus test for the Christians of the world of all kinds of different flavors and whatever. Are we just leaving people better than we found them? The Mormons that you ran into, I'm convinced, they left you better than they found you. They just did, right? And how many of us are out there debating people on social media because Christians in this world that are not leaving people better than they found them? They're taking some things literally, but they're not taking it seriously, and they're not leaving behind love in this world. They're not leaving behind grace in this world. By the way, we might be part of that problem as well in our own ways. I'm not just here to blame other people, right? So Jesus is modeling for people, healing wherever he goes. There's all kinds of stories of this, of Jesus just going from one town to another. There's stories of Jesus finding a sick woman. Jesus just modeling it again and again and again for every type of different people that are in this world. Jesus heals them and models that. And then just a few verses ago, a couple weeks ago, by the way, we've been in Mark since the beginning of the year. We're in Mark chapter 6. You do the math. Next presidential election, we will be done with this thing. So we're in Mark 6. And Jesus has modeled again for them what this good news looks like. And then eventually Jesus says, okay, now apostles, you that are like really into this thing, I want you to go out and do the same thing. But again, I grew up in the world where go out and do the same thing as I thought that I was like, you ever like get the verses like I need to go like put like oil on people's heads? And I think that's all great. But I think at the deeper level, Jesus is saying like go out and be healing in the world just like I am. And that doesn't mean that you need to like take tracts with you. I've shared this story before in here. When I was 17, I remember getting stopped at TSA in the airport because my backpack was filled with Bibles and tracts telling people that they were going to hell. That's what I thought that the good news was. That's not good news. That's an American version of fundamentalism that makes everybody feel awful and makes God look very, very small. Good news, I think, is this deeper reality where we're so alive, where we so see that we're made in the image of God. We're so healed. We've so confronted big words like sin, right? Palpable disruption of shalom, the hurt that we've experienced in our life, that those things are becoming whole in us. And as we become whole, whatever it is, whatever our purposes that we're doing in the world, maybe we write movies, maybe we're a parent, maybe we're a cook, maybe we're a school teacher, that wherever we go, this thing's just leaking because you can't give what you don't have. And as that good news does something in you and to you and with you and through you, then I think it begins to add life to the world around you. And that's what Jesus was inviting people into. He wasn't saying go on the street and make people mad because you're telling them how angry God is. That's a weird story. No, Jesus is saying you come fully alive because I've shown you that when you're fully alive what this life can look like. So they do it, it says. It says that in Mark they go out and they do the thing. They heal people, and they do the work that Jesus did. And then there's like a weird passage where John gets beheaded, which is kind of like, okay, there's always political turmoil. It's not new in 2024. That's just how things happen around here, I guess. And then they come back, and they're telling Jesus about the work that they have done. And then, so the apostles turned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all that they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest there for a while. And he said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. Have you ever just been there where you're like living your best life? You're fully connected and aligned with what you're supposed to be doing in the world. You're like just on level 10 right now. Your creativity is flowing. Your purpose is at a max. And then you get a fender bender. And then you get sick. And then the aunt calls. You know who she is. And then you read that thing on social media, and then the news comes. Or, not even just the crazy stuff, your life is just demanding. Parents in this room, have you ever been so alive at work and you know this is the thing that I'm supposed to do in the world, and you come home at 5 p.m. and you have to get them to soccer practice? And does your soul scream? Sometimes, sometimes not. And I think that we're all there at some level. There's things where we understand this story. We went out and did in the world what we were supposed to do, and then life just happened to us. And we felt busy. We felt overwhelmed. We felt anxious. We felt bombarded. We felt like people were demanding things on our life. We just felt like it was too much. Have you been there? It just feels too much. How many of us use these words? I'm just so busy right now. How many of you have called a friend and you haven't talked to him in like 3 months, and you both just have that awkward exchange of, you're just too busy to connect? And I think what Jesus is showing is that Jesus wants to send us out into the world to live into our purpose, to live into this radical good news where we are fully loved, where we can fully love, where we're just humming, right? Where we're doing all the things that we love in the world. And I love the honesty of these stories, that sometimes you're out there doing that, and then you just get overwhelmed along the way. And so then Jesus invites them into something. Jesus invites them into rest. I want to pause here. We have so much more to go in the story. But the story of the Gospels are really interesting for this reason. I was taught that stories of the Gospel are just meant to be taken literally all the time, and that wasn't always helpful. Really, the stories of the Gospel are the people of God retelling stories about Jesus decades after the fact, because they were giving them stories that would be helpful about the life of Jesus for their current journey. And so those stories were meant to be universal. I grew up in the world of church, which was evangelicalism. That's just my particular flavor and branch. We had a lot of things going on there. Some good, some bad, whatever, just life. And in that world, if we use words universal, that was like the devil. Anyone grow up in that world? Universal was very scary. Joke's on them. The word Catholic means universal. That's the word. The Catholic Church, you know, like the original one, the one that we all were for like 1,500 years, is called the Universal Church. Talk about a scary time, right, for some people. It was universal for a reason. It was not meant to be a gospel that excludes people. It was meant to be a universal gospel that includes all people, that wherever you find yourself in the world, that wherever you find yourself in your situations in life, there's something in these stories of good news that are for you. And there's this universal reality that Jesus is inviting into. First is, you want to find your purpose. I don't care who you are or what state of life or what time in history, there's something in you as a human being that wants to find your purpose. There's something in you as a human being that wants to come fully alive. There's something in you as a human being that wants to do more than just farm for potatoes every day or whatever the thing was, right? We want that space in our life. And there's a universal reality that sometimes when we live into these things, that we're just going to feel overwhelmed, bombarded, and it never feels like we fully have time to do all of the things that we want to in our purpose. And isn't that the magic of it? The magic of it is that life just isn't this little vacuum where you live into your purpose and you're just out there doing the ministry of Jesus or whatever the thing is that you're called to into the world, and it all just goes well, and it's always up and to the right, and it ends with yachts and in Fiji. It just doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes the story is, yeah, you get to do a little bit of what you get to do, and then you got to go deal with some tension in the world. And then you deal with the tension, and sometimes it's in the tension that you learn and that you grow and that you create, and things didn't fully work out for you, and things didn't go as planned, and that's where you actually evolved, and that's where you had some different questions. That's where you saw a side of yourself that you didn't think so before, and then you get back into your creativity, and you've got a whole new thing to say and do and be in the world. I think that's the magic of the thing. We call that, by the way, just death and resurrection, that thing is cycling and that thing is moving. So that was a long intro for those things. But Jesus is calling his disciples into this purpose. They're dealing with the overwhelming odds of coming back home, and they just want to be rested, by the way. They just want a little break off from all the work, and they're immediately bombarded by people again and again who want time in their life. When you read about all of these Olympians, they talk about this. That they work, that they work, that they work, that they get to the games, and then it's over. It's just done. Have you ever been there? You've done all of the things. You made the thing. You created the thing. You got your kid out of the house. Pick your thing, whatever it may be. You got them to school. And now, maybe you went to the award show. Maybe you didn't go to the award show. And now it's just thankless and it's done. And there's just the blues. There's just the, oh, now what do I do? Now what do I figure out? How do I make sense of this thing? And that's what I think Jesus invites us into next. And the story goes like this. Again, Jesus first invites them to a quiet place to rest a while. Other versions say this. Jesus says, come with me and let's go find rest. That one of the things that Jesus provides for us in continuing to find our purpose is that Jesus invites us into a place of rest. And they said, so they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. But many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. And Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped out from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. And late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, hey, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. There's no Trader Joe's around. Send the crowds away so they can, it's in the Greek, so they can go to the nearby farms and villages. That was such a low pastor joke. Thank you for laughing. That was sad, but you did it, and you joined me there. Thank you so much. So they went to the nearby farms and villages to buy some. Oh, so they can go to the nearby farms and villages to buy something to eat. But Jesus said, you feed them. Ugh. You're out there living in your purpose and the things that you're supposed to be doing, and you're just worn out, and you have nothing else to give, and there's just one more demand from your boss. One more email, one more deadline. Your kids are hungry at 10 p.m. after practice. I know that one. You get one more call from your parent. It's just the universal reality of life. Sometimes you're just worn out, worn down, and then there's more, right? There's more to come. And with that, they asked, we'd have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people. And how much bread do you have? He asked. Go and find out. They came back and reported, we have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. And Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looked up towards heaven and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so that he could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share, and they all ate as much as they wanted. And afterward, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish, and a total of 5,000 men and their families were fed. I know you've all heard this story before. You've probably heard this story in a bunch of different contexts. And there's 2 takeaways that I have from the story as I really think about it. Not just what the story has, but what the disciples were doing before the story. That they were out there doing the thing that they had trained to do, doing the thing that they had wanted to do, doing the thing that they had given their life to do. They were worn out and they didn't have anything else to give. And Jesus is still showing them something and offering them something. First thing is this. Jesus invites them into rest. Jesus doesn't just invite them into rest. Jesus invites them into rest with him. Now, this is a little bit of a hard one for a bunch of liberals who've deconstructed and they're figuring it out and what's going on. But rest is one of the most revolutionary, liberating, progressive things that the world has ever seen. And it was created in scriptures through the people of God. Let me give you an example of this. The Egyptians were these monarchs that had slaves. Their slaves were the Israelites. They were slaves for 400 years. When you're a slave, there's no time, by the way. There's no day off. There's no clocking in. There's no clocking out. You just work again and again and again until you die. When you are working again and again and again till you die, you don't have time for purpose. You don't have time for creativity. You don't have time for a lot of the magic of life because you're not being given the ability to do that. That's the story in the scriptures. And then it says that Yahweh comes, right? And that Yahweh hears the cries of the Egyptians. And then you know the story of the Exodus. If you don't know the story of Exodus, watch The Prince of Egypt. Get back to me. We'll catch up after that. So Prince of Egypt movie has happened. Perfect. And now the people have been liberated from Pharaoh, liberated from Egypt, and now they're in the wilderness. And weird things start to happen there. God starts to give them commandments. And we're like, oh, that's a weird thing. That God's demanding things from them. Not demanding in the weird, aggressive, this God is a sociopath sort of way, but demanding in the way of, let me give you a framework that's going to allow you to live, to fully live. And then God gives these 10 commandments, and in there's this weird one. Keep the Sabbath. And when you keep the Sabbath, it says, then what you need to do is that you need to make sure that everybody in your communities, even your slaves, that they have the Sabbath as well. That just like goes over our head in 2024. 4,000 years ago, that's one of the most revolutionary things ever. What God is saying to all people, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you find yourself in society, whether you find yourself in the top 1% or the bottom 1%, whatever, you deserve rest. In fact, you need rest as a human being. You need space. And I think that those words are probably more powerful for us now than they've ever been before. Because I am good at creating space to then give myself more opportunity to be distracted. So I love creating space for myself, not to rest, but then just to stare at a screen and not deal with anything that's going on in my life. I know I'm alone in that. I'm just saying that's a pattern that I have in my life. I think some of that is good. I love the access and ability that we have to so much content and goodness in the world. But I think what Jesus is inviting his disciples to in this story is, come and rest with me. This is like some of the most old school evangelical stuff that's out there. I really believe, more than anything in my life at this point, that when I create space with God, that when I create my intention and my attention just to be with God in some way, it reshapes my life. It refocuses me. I do it in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes I go to hot 8 yoga. It's so freaking good. Sometimes I just go on a walk early morning before anybody's awake. I make sure that my phone or my watch isn't with me. I just see the sun come up. And I just bring my intention and attention towards God. That part of that rest, that part of that space is just connecting with the divine. That moment that some of us felt earlier that Josh just named, where you're like, man, there's something more here. Something more in the room. Something more in the cosmos. I think I just need that. And I find that when I find that, when I make space for that, then my creativity and my doing and my purpose and my building. And by the way, I'm an Enneagram 3, so like creating rest, horrible, awful, not for me. I want to be out there building empires at all times, high octane, or just sleeping hard. Like there's not a lot of in between that I want. But when I slow down and I create space, it's there that I actually find that I build better. I build more compassionately and gently and thoughtfully and empathetically in the world. And I find that when I'm not doing that, I'm good at running people over or bulldozing things and not listening. There's more hurt in my life. I don't know what Enneagram number you are. I don't know where you find yourself. But I think what Jesus is inviting us into. I know this is a story about feeding 5,000 people and miracles and this and that, and that's how we've always heard the story. I hear a story of a bunch of disciples who are out there doing all that they were supposed to be doing in the world. They were fully alive. They came back home. They wanted what everyone wanted when they came back home. They wanted to put on a little bit of Netflix, just have a little bit of break, but they got that one more call, and it felt like too much. And then even Jesus is like, well, you go feed them. And you're like, well, Jesus, got some words for you. I almost said a cuss word to Jesus in church. Anyways, moving on. So, okay, side note story. By the way, this is just a commercial break. I'm a 24-year-old pastor in a large church. I would speak 5 times on a Sunday in front of thousands of people, and I thought it was really, really awesome because I'm 24. This has nothing to do with my sermon. I just said that, and I want to tell you guys this, so you're welcome for being here. And I was in the middle of a sermon, and I said this thing because I was like, I feel like sometimes in the world of church, we just don't say the thing that we honestly want to say, and I don't even remember the passage. I'm like, sometimes what I want to do to Jesus is I just want to slap him. But I did this thing of Jesus on the cross, and I slapped him, and boy, did I get in a lot of trouble in that church. It's just a side story where someone had a little conversation with me about reverence and maturity. You've never seen so many little old ladies come up to me and tell me that I offended their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I said, honestly noted, but you've never felt like you wanted to slap Jesus before? I'm just saying. Because sometimes I feel that way. Because sometimes it feels like too much. And we're back to the sermon. That was just a side story. So they're in the story, and even Jesus is demanding something from them, but Jesus first offers them rest. And I think the thing that we take in our lives when we're trying to find purpose, when we're trying to find who we are, when we're trying to live our best lives, how do we find rest? And not just any kind of rest, but for my liberals here who quiet time was thrown out the window a long time ago. Maybe you need to bring it back in some way. Maybe it doesn't look like what it used to be and laying Charles Spurgeon or C.S. Lewis or whatever on your face and having a cup of tea. Maybe it's a walk, a hike, a yoga, a this or a that, but it's just space where your intention and attention goes towards God. And maybe that you'll find in your life that when you create just a little bit of rest and that rest grows and your attention is there, you're going to have more purpose and more creativity and more meaning and more life because you're going to mirror your soul against the creator of the universe. As you mirror your soul against the creator of the universe, you're going to find that more of the creator that's in you, and you're going to stop reacting to your life and you're going to start building the life that you actually want because you've made space for the things that you care about. Maybe that. Second thing, this one will go fast. What I love about this story, regardless of what version of church you come from, conservative, liberal, this, that, the story really always lands here. God provided. That's the story. There's a part of our life that beyond all of the thinking, beyond how smart you are, beyond how many Rob Bell's books you've read, beyond all of the things, you'll just come to a place in life where you don't have enough. You have lived out your purpose, you are living into your meaning, you are living into your calling, you are building your empires, or you're not. You're just dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with depression, you can't deal with life day by day, and wherever you find yourself on that spectrum, there will always just be days in life where you will just need God to provide for you. That's the end of the story. The first part of the story is the disciples were out there doing the things that they were supposed to do. That's your part in the world. Go find your purpose. Go find your meaning. Go follow that thing. Go do it. Go make yourself alive. The world needs your creativity. The world needs you to be that parent, be that cook, be that whatever. Go be that thing. The second part of the story is there are just places in life after you've done everything that you can do that you don't have anything else to give. You can't feed that many people. You can't answer that many emails. You'll never be able to solve all of those problems. There's not good answers for why that suffering is happening. There's not good answers for why that betrayal took place. You just need God to provide for you. And sometimes I just need the reminder of that. I just need God to provide for me. That's a really easy sentence to say. And you've all been there in those moments where you've pleaded with God to provide for you, and nothing has happened. Nothing felt like it changed. But I've noticed this in life sometimes. I'll look back years later or decades later, and I'll see the story in a very different way. Maybe God was there the whole time. Maybe there's little inklings of goodness and hope and joy and of God's provision showing up in my life. I just really didn't have any eyes to see it in that moment. Maybe part of that reality is that I'm just here. And that's how I know that God provided for me. The story will always move towards this. If we're going to honestly follow this way of Jesus, if we're going to honestly follow these demands for maturity in our life, where Jesus is demanding rest for our life, not in the gross way, but what a good God that says, I'm demanding that you create rest for your life and rest all around you so that you will thrive. I'm demanding maturity in some way that you'll see my provision, that you will know that it's okay that you don't have enough. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Not come to me, all of you weary and burdened, and I will teach you a way to find rest for your life. No. I will give you rest. I will give you rest when you can't give it for yourself. But real maturity looks like this. Sometimes we wait for God's provision, and sometimes, as these followers of Jesus, when we have provision ourselves, we share it with other people. That's just what we do. You find a way to give it to other people because you have needed it at times and people have given it to you, and now you need to give it to others. That's the story of provision. And so I end with a story. Like 3 weeks ago, I was talking to a buddy here at church, and he runs a water project called Thirst Project, and we couldn't find a time to go to dinner, so somehow at the end of that conversation, I was going to Africa with him. Normal story. And so now we're in Africa, and I've been to these galas, and they're incredible, and he's provided water for hundreds of thousands of people around the world. You know, if you know about something, like you've heard something really incredible, and then you see the thing. Now I'm seeing the thing. And I've been on mission trips, and I've done all the thing, and I've tried converting people. Real good time. This just felt so different. This just felt like there's a need, you provide for it. It's not crazier than that. And we show up for the first day. It's in Eswatini. It's a community it's a country that is literally run by a monarch still. This monarch is not always benevolent in any way, shape, or form, not providing water for his people. There's millions of people in this country who don't have clean water. And I know we say these things, think about these things, Cory, but there's so many problems in America to deal with. Great, I get all of that. Just be with me here right now in this moment. I'm in another country, and I show up to a well in the bush, and there's women and girls. It's always women and girls in these countries, right, sitting around the well. Because the men are off working, and that's how it goes. And we show up, and we see their water source. And the water source is exactly what you think of. It's like a hole in the ground. It's a spring. It's covered in animal defecation. And you see the moms with the babies wrapped around their back, going in, stepping on tires, pulling water out of it, right? And this is life. And when kids come home from school, and girls can't afford to go to school because they got to go collect water, so then it's the boys. They go as long as they can, right? They got to spend 2 hours going to get the water, and then you don't get to do. We're talking about creativity and purpose and the things that we're making in the world. I come back to the United States, and we're talking about DEI and this politically. They're just collecting dirty water for 2 hours a day. It's just really, really hard to go even care about all this other stuff if you're just collecting dirty water 2 hours a day. And people are sick, and they have coughs, and they have things, and you can just name all of the things. I know we've seen it. This is not like poverty porn. I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm just saying I saw something with my own eyes. It was this moment of just like, here, these are other human beings, and what they just lack is something so simple for us, and to build a well is $10,000. That's it, $10,000. They drilled 300 feet deep. Someone comes in, a construction company, and then all these people have water for the next 40 years. Clean, perfect, changes. They get healthy now. They don't have to travel for 2 hours. They get to start playing soccer. They get to start reading books. Girls get to start going to school. That's amazing, right? And I just remember the moment. They drilled the well, putting all the concrete up, start to pump it, and the water comes out. And this beautiful community just starts singing aloud in praise, basically, for this clean water. And just sitting there behind my glasses, just bawling my little eyes out, seeing all these little kids strapped to backs. Because they're going to get clean water. And unlike their grandmas and their aunties and their whoever, they're never going to know a life with dirty water. They're just going to get to come to a pump and pump it and have clean water, and they don't have to be sick anymore, and they're going to have a different dream, and they're going to have a different purpose. And it was just one of the clearest moments for me in the world of just provision. Somebody was on this trip. She had done the thing. She's made one of the most biggest movies that the world's seen in the last few years. The movie made over $1.5 billion, and there she was. And she's lived out her purpose. She's done all of her things, but she chose to show up to a trip. She brought her daughter with her, and she says, I have $10,000. And now a village of 200 people has clean water. It's just so simple for me. And I think the story for me is God just shows up and provides for us in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes God provides for us in just the gentleness of a friend and the power of a story. God provides for us when we're not even thinking about it. And sometimes God provides and shows up through other people around us. And I thought about all of you, New Abbey. It's not clean water that you need, but I think that many of you guys show up to this place like a well that you get provided for, that you find healing, that you find life, that you are offering life to one another, and I think that's a gift. And the thing that I love about this community is the ways that you continue to provide for one another, the ways that you continue to show up. If you're in this community and you don't know someone and you don't have help and you haven't found healing, there's a person sitting next to you. I'm staring at Mickey right now. He would love to give you a hug. He would love to talk with you. He'd love to hear your story. You're all laughing because you know it. Have you met Mindy Painter before? She will bring healing to your life. She will mother you. She will care for you. She will know you. Have you ever heard Adam talk to children before? Because my kids will talk about it. Adam's teaching at church today. I could go around the room and name all of the stories of the ways that you were providing for each other, and keep doing it now, Abbey. Keep showing up. And when we don't have it, we'll trust in God to provide for us, but we're telling a bigger story of God. We're telling a different kind of good news. We are, I believe, a well in a desert, which is crazy in Los Angeles. That in the year 2024, there are not more churches that are preaching stories of inclusivity, right? Stories where everybody's welcome, where everybody is made in the image of God. But I think that we're doing that work together. I clearly was gone in Africa for 2 weeks because I gave like one of the longest sermons of my life. Thank you for enduring. In Jesus' name, I got so much back sweat, I'm terrified to turn around. If you'd find those same 3 or 4 people around you, would you answer this question? Where is God providing in your life right now? Enjoy.